All right, what is going on, everybody? It is another edition of Bropinions, Stardom, Situm for Week 16. We're going to go into championship games. Now, I know those start tonight. John the Stone is feeling a bit under the weather, could not be with us, so he did send me the notes on his starts and sits for this week. The championship games, if you are lucky enough to be in. If you're not, then you probably had something like my team where Diggs didn't do anything and Sanders didn't do anything, or Josh Jacobs didn't do anything, or the defense you started didn't do anything, or things of that nature. But if you are lucky enough to be in the championship game, here is going to be our starts and sits for the week. We will say last week's hits and misses for John the Stone. The start hit was definitely Daniel Jones. He was QB9 on the week. His sits hit was Zay Jones, so that was really good. Didn't do much of anything. Was wide receiver 87. His start miss was Nick Folk. Didn't do as well as he thought he was going to. And of course, his sit miss is going to be my start hit was George Kittle. Had 29 points in our league. And don't worry, we will talk about the pizza when John the Stone is back. So those are hits and misses of last week. On QB starts this week, John the Stone has Justin Fields. This game has the highest over-under at 52. They're in Detroit, so Goff and company should keep up and create a shootout. Goff has been very good at home this season, not spectacular on the road, and that continued last week with Carolina. But if it does go into a shootout, Fields will have an opportunity to keep up, especially using and utilizing his run game that he's done so well pretty much most of the season. So John the Stone start is going to be Justin Fields at QB for championship week. Mine is actually going to be Aaron Rodgers. They're at Lambeau. They're playing Minnesota, so it's a huge rivalry game. Minnesota is 11-0 in one score games. So I think Rodgers, this team's hot right now. They feel it's tangible, the old Packer electricity that has been, missing the last couple of years. It started to really pick up right here. He's getting connection with his younger receivers. They do need to lean on the run game a little bit more, but I do like Aaron Rodgers at home versus the Vikings this week. I'm not saying Green Bay is going to win the game. I think this turns into a kind of a boxing match. Cousins will do a good drive. Rodgers will do a good drive, and then they'll get an answer out of Minnesota there. So I think that's the kind of game, and more of these will be positive drives than negative drives. I don't see a lot of 3 and outs in this game. So QB start for Georgia is Aaron Rodgers versus Minnesota at Lambeau. Going into running backs, John the Stone, running back start of the week is going to be Jamal Williams. This is definitely a bounce back week for him. They struggled last week in the run game. Already mentioned the over-under. There's tons of points to be had. Somebody's going to score them, and Jamal Williams is getting the goal line looks. So I think that is very possible for him to get 2 touchdowns on the day. If they get stopped inside the 5, they'll just run it in. So Chicago is the 4th best matchup for running back, and we're going back to his very big brain words of adjusted fantasy points above, I don't know what he says. He knows that big stat. Go back, listen to a couple of editions of the pod, and he will say it correctly, because I do not say it correctly. But he thinks this is going to be a pretty good matchup, not only because Chicago gives up the 4th most points to a running back, but he'll go above the projection. So Jamal Williams, running back for John the Stone. Me, I actually am on the other side of it. I like David Montgomery. I think they need to run the ball. They're at Detroit, so again, there's a ton of points to be had in this game. Montgomery has turned it on. I think he is going to do well catching it out of the backfield. So look at David Montgomery. That is definitely a start for me at Detroit. Moving on to wide receivers. He's got Allen Lazard. This is a must-win game for Green Bay. They are in that mode of win or go home, so everybody's playing up to their best potential. The Vikings' pass defense is the second best matchup for wide receivers. The Vikings' defense has been leaky all year. It's just the offense is able to come back and put them in good positions to win the game. So this one has a 47-point over-under. Again, ton of points to be had. Look for Lazard to have a big game, which goes to my QB start with Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, John the Stone thinks Lazard is going to be a very big beneficiary of that game. So, Allen Lazard, John the Stone's wide receiver start of the week. Mine is going to be T. Higgins versus Buffalo. Cincinnati's at home. I like Higgins because I think Jamar Chase is going to get the best safety over the top. So, or corner, he's going to be double covered. He's going to get a lot, and I think that opens up the door for Higgins. Plus, Irwin is over there, and that will get another look after his big game last week. I think T. Higgins is the big benefactor of Jamar Chase being covered up and people looking at Irwin and not being able to look at Higgins. Plus, Buffalo is just looking not shaky, but a little out of sync. So I think there might be a little bit of internal turmoil in Buffalo, and Cincinnati will be the beneficiary of that. Going to tight ends, my tight end, Georgia's tight end, is going to be George Kittle. I'm going to ride the Purdy wave of San Francisco. Had another big game last week. Shout out Deep Dish Pizza. Chicago is the best. But George Kittle has been great for 2 games straight. I think Purdy keeps that rocking. I think Shanahan is going to keep that thought process going with George Kittle. They have done a lot of interesting play calls with him, and Purdy is obviously comfortable throwing him the ball. So Kittle is turning himself into a top 3 tight end easily. So if you are worried about him coming back down or whatever, don't. They're going to play the Raiders, who is in shambles right now. And I think San Francisco looks to kind of make a statement win, and the Raiders are prime to make a statement against. So mine is going to be George Kittle, where the tight end for John the Stone is going to be Tyler Conklin. Mike White is back. Done dealing with the rib injury. I'm sure there's some residual pain there, but it is not enough to keep him out of the game. So that is good, because Zach Wilson could not throw a football and hit a barn if he tried. So with Mike White being back, Tyler Conklin is a great start. Seattle is the best matchup for tight ends. We saw what George Kittle did against Seattle. It's not going to be one that's going to win you the week, but if you absolutely need to manage something, move something, shift things around, Conklin is a solid start. Don't look at him to go off, but look at him to be very serviceable and helpful in your lineup. So, kickers, I like Jake Elliott against the Saints. They're going to be at home in Philly. I think that leads to a lot of scoring. They're still up in the air on whether Jalen Hurts is going to start or not. So pick up Minshew if you have Hurts and started somebody else last week. I think this leads to a lot of scoring, and I like Jake Elliott in between the 20s. Plus, the PAT attempts will help you as well. I think that Philly wants to bounce back real hard after losing the tight one with the Cowboys last week. So Jake Elliott's primed to do some damage with the Saints. John the Stone's kicker, the boot of the week, will be Mason Crosby. Again, we've touched on Green Bay's game a lot. Big rivalry game. Everybody wants to be at the top of their game in this one. And again, it is a Green Bay must win. Win or go home mindset up there. And Minnesota has given up the most points to kickers on the season. So when they aren't able to score, Green Bay, that means that you're going to be rewarded by starting Crosby because you're going to get the field goal points out of it. So look at it that way. If the drives stall out for Rodgers, then you're going to have Crosby there to pick up some of the slack to get you the points in field goals. In Green Bay, shouldn't be too windy. I know it'll be cold again, but he's used to kicking there. He's at home. He knows what to do. So solid Crosby and or Elliott. And now we're going on to defense. I like the Chargers versus the Rams. I know that the Rams hung 52 last week. That was incredible. I have no idea how they did that, but I look at this game to come back down to earth. The Chargers are at home. I like the team defense they play. They fly to the football. And I think the Rams, now that everybody has some film on Baker Mayfield and the Rams scheme, are going to start paying attention. And I think they limit the Rams pretty hard this week at home. So look at the Chargers to do well versus LA. The Rams, the LA Bowl over there. Defense for John the Stone is going to be the Giants, which was actually my first pick, and then I saw his notes, so went a different route. The Giants are at home against the worst offense in the league, so that is a huge thing. This is a Giants must-win game. It's win or go home, so that means, everybody, again, to that Green Bay pedigree, they are going to be at their top level best because they want to make the best of this season. They've started the season off great, sputtered, and they want to end well. So it's a huge thing. Not to mention, Indy is a complete mess. Matt Ryan getting benched. Their receivers are okay. The running game, you'd think Jonathan Taylor, he's underperformed all year. The front office is kind of messy. It's just hard to trust anything with Indy. So with not trusting Indy, that benefits the Giants. Start their D. Moving on to sits of the week. These people are not to be trusted this week. I went with who you would normally trust and to be wary of. Mine, QB, is going to be Trevor Lawrence at Houston. He's dealing with a little bit of a lower body injury, so I think that stops him in his mobility a bit. So where he would normally pick up a 3rd and 4 on a scramble drill, I don't know if he is able to do that this week. Nothing in me says that Houston's going to win this game, but Houston at different points has made incredible games out of what we thought they were going to get demolished. So keep an eye out. I don't think Lawrence, a lot of his points come for extending the drives, being able to run, and that gets you some more passing yards. That gets you rush yards. I don't think the rush yards are going to be there. So if you're on the teeter-totter about who to start, I don't trust Lawrence this week. John the Stone's QB sit of the week is going to be Taylor Heineke. Cleveland is the 3rd worst matchup for QBs, and the Commanders are still struggling to bring it all together. They did not have a great game last week. There has been great points of their star power, but they're not a contender. They're not, anything of that nature. They're just missing the mojo kind of feel to it, is what he's saying. So they're just trying to get it cohesive, but you don't want somebody to try to be cohesive in championship week, so sit Taylor Heineke. John the Stone's running back sit is going to be Devontae Foreman. Tampa Bay is a tough run defense. They're the 7th overall in the league. And I don't know if they can redo what they did last week. I think everybody sees them as a running team. And if I was the defensive coordinator, I'd be okay with leaving people out on the edges and put 8 or 9 in the box. Make them run like they did last week, and I don't think they do. Clearly, John the Stone feels the same way. And the game script of this is definitely not in favor of Carolina's run game, which is what they lean on heavily. So it's just a tough matchup. If you can go somewhere else, try to go somewhere else. And mine is going to be DeAndre Swift versus Chicago. My run back sit is Swift. Where he has the start at Jamal Williams is a very good start, I think. Swift has underperformed most of the season. He's went off a couple of weeks, but not spectacular season for DeAndre Swift, especially where I think he was 2nd round normally to get drafted in fantasy leagues. So he's not lived up to a second rounder at all. Keep that in check. He may take a few swing passes out, but it is hard for me to imagine him getting a touchdown in this game. So if you're on the fence, sit DeAndre Swift. Wide receiver sit for me is going to be Devontae Adams. They just came out. The Raiders said that they are not going to play Derek Carr. They're going to move on to Stidham. That seems terrible to me. I don't know if it's inner conflict about behind-the-scenes kind of stuff. I don't know if it's performance. I don't really know. But the Raiders seem just terrible off-kilter. They don't make great decisions. You thought Devontae Adams coming in was going to lead them up, and I don't know what's going on. But I just don't trust him with all the turmoil this week. It doesn't seem like they are in their game plan. Not to mention, they're playing San Francisco. Now, I know they're in Vegas, but San Francisco's defense is sick. It is disgusting. And that is just a bad recipe. New QB going to a wide out that is going to be double covered the whole game. They haven't utilized Hollins all that well. I just don't think it's a great time or a great matchup to depend on Devontae Adams if you're in the championship game or going after third place. Sit him, use that spot for somebody else. You'll get more production somewhere than Devontae Adams. Wide receiver for John the Stone is going to be DK Metcalf. And his note says Sauce, which means Sauce Gardner is going to be on him. I know that DK is a big wide out with strong hands and everything. But again, we've touched on it a couple of weeks in a row now. Sauce Gardner is going ham in the NFL. It's been amazing. I'm pretty sure he's a Pro Bowler this year, and he's a rookie. So what he's been able to do is great. Most offensive game plans are just not throwing to him, and with that, I think DK suffers. And clearly John the Stone does as well. Lockett is out, so they are going to concentrate on DK and make Seattle go somewhere else besides their big receiver there. That limits your points. So check out a different spot outside of DK for your wide receiver or the flex option that you have. Last but not least, tight ends is going to be Shane Zylstra. I probably didn't say that right. Zylstra. Yeah, we'll say that. Don't buy into the blow-up game. That was a one and done. He did have 3 touchdowns, but he only had 26 yards. So Chicago is the 4th worst matchup for tight ends. It is a big name. He's trending on most of the apps. We're using Sleeper. We understand that, but don't buy into that hype. He's not going to repeat that. There's no way. So we're both calling the shot that Shane is not going to do that again this week. And my tight end sit of the week is going to be Hayden Hurst versus Buffalo. With Jamar Chase getting most of the looks out of there, you would think Hayden Hurst would be a start. I don't trust that at all. I like Higgins way more. Plus, Irwin came on last week, so I think they're going to get more looks over there and try to utilize the wideouts more than you're going to look at the tight ends. He may get some dump-off passes, but if this does turn out to be a shootout, I like the repertoire that Higgins has, that Jamar Chase does have with Burrow, and I don't think that is there for Hurst. So try to look at another tight end. I'm sure somebody has my start of George Kittle, but try to find another value pick, but not Hayden Hurst. He's not the guy this week. So I know this was an expedited one, guys. I understand it is not as much fun hearing me and John the Stone banter back and forth and have fun and all those kind of things. But we hope you get well, man. John the Stone, get well soon. We'd love to hear you back next week for the final games, and then try to do a playoff preview and see who we're going to look at in the wild card rounds and do pick'ems. So this should end the fantasy stardom situms, but next we'll do picks in the NFL, and we'll probably preview the national championship game, which will be settled on the teams after Saturday. So everybody check back in with us on Tuesday, Wednesday time frame next week to get reviews of the wild card rounds and everything, and some picks for next week's, the final week of the NFL season. So thank you guys again, John the Stone. Get well soon. We're all hoping for you, man. And everybody, Fam Jam, we're out.